Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Interact's Creator Stories podcast. I'm your host, Jasmine Solana, and with me today, I have Emily Kund. Welcome, Emily. Thanks so much for being on our show with us today.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I am so excited to be here.
Of course, of course. And if you guys don't know, Emily's actually one of our certified quiz consultants. So this is one of those where I am really excited about because we've worked together a little bit in that capacity, but I haven't really gotten your backstory. So I'm really excited to hear what that is. And you've been working with us, I think, as a partner since, oh gosh, it was early on in my days. I think it was maybe 2018-ish.
2019
Something
sounds right.
similar, yeah, like somewhere around
Yeah.
there. So it's been quite a while. But you are the creator of Emily Kund Quizzes, which is your business. And it's an agency that makes list building business. Totally read that. Too many S's, but list building business fun and easy with lead generation quizzes. So this is something that I found super interesting. You used to be a bank examiner and then you became an entrepreneur, and you use your current experience to help the difference makers and disruptors build their text and email lists to connect and create client relationships with quizzes. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I absolutely love it.
So tell me a little bit more about your business right now, and then we're going to go back to the beginning. And I want to hear more about what you did as a bank examiner and how that actually helped you with your business today.
Yeah, so today I am building out my quiz agency, and I am so excited to be in this stage of business because one of my missions, like my mission in life, my personal mission, is to help economically and educationally empower women. So what I get to do is I take a percent of my net income and I donate it to my Pretty Strong Smart scholarship fund, which goes to girls graduating high school that are going into a STEM field. So that's my way of educationally empowering women. And so like doing this really just, it lights me up. So I'm really excited for building out this quiz agency.
How exciting. So take us back to the beginning. How did you go from bank examiner to an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I had this great job and I loved being a bank examiner. And then it was the spring of, I think it was 2017, 2018, somewhere in that neighborhood, where I was finally able to go to one of my son's Little League games.
Mm.
And I was starting to make small talk with the moms. And one of them said to me, do you even have a son? Do you have a son playing in this game? And that was a gut punch because they didn't even know who I was. I think they thought my husband was a single father. I hadn't been
Gosh.
because that the spring was during a high travel season for my work,
Mhm.
and I was distraught that I couldn't be there. Um, and then that really led to me, and I remember this clearly, looking out of my window in DC where I used to work, and I was looking at the top of the Capitol building and looking at the top of the Washington Monument thinking, there has got to be more to life than this. And I started thinking about what would life look like if I wasn't here, if I wasn't at that job. And I really started to research and think about separating, which I ultimately did. But it didn't go from bank examiner to quiz maker.
Mhm.
There was a stop along the way where I had also picked up skills in data visualization,
Wow.
so the dashboards and that type of thing. And I thought to myself, I could provide data services for banks, or I could provide data services for entrepreneurs. Except a lot of entrepreneurs don't like to hear the word data. Some of them cringe. And some of it just was, it was really hard to talk about. And it was really in the winter of 2018 where I didn't have any money coming in because I hadn't caught on to like my messaging and what would work. I was so new. Like as smart as I was in other areas, this was still like totally like I hadn't nailed that part of it yet.
Mhm.
And my husband, who works in the public sector, was furloughed. So we had no money coming in whatsoever. And somehow I stumbled upon Interact, and I was doing network marketing as like a hobby. And I was like, well, if I do like I thought about our position in that my husband had this steady income, but then all of the sudden it wasn't there anymore. And so we thought we had the security, but we actually didn't. So I was like, oh, I wonder, I wonder if other people know how financially fit they are. And so I created a quiz on,
Nice.
whether somebody, if how financially fit are you? I posted it to my Facebook page. And while I didn't get anybody to sign up for my network marketing team like I had hoped, um, what I did get was somebody going, Emily, this is amazing. Like, this is actually better than what some of the banks have. And that one piece of validation was all I needed to go, well, wait a minute. I love data and I know how helpful it can be. And what I keep hearing from my entrepreneur friends in these masterminds is, will it get me leads? Will it get me clients? Will it increase my income? And I thought, well, that's amazing. I think it can do both. And then I went all in on quizzes. And I like truly, I think, and I even tell people this when I speak at different events or if I'm just like chatting with people, I truly believe quizzes are one of the best tools for an entrepreneur, not just lead generation or not just client retention, but truly one of the best because of the market research and the insights that you can get from it. So like it's right, like I love it. It's super fun.
How exciting. So what are some of the challenges that you experienced kind of, trying to build this business and then you had to do somewhat of a pivot, which seemed like ended up doing well, obviously, because now that's your business. But, what are some of the challenges going from that and then, kind of starting new?
Yeah, so I think one of the challenges is that I had people go, I don't really understand how this works.
Yeah.
Like, or all they thought about was like the Disney princess quiz, which they're
Mhm.
like, quizzes are fun. They're not like business. And even to this day, like, I was chatting with somebody in Messenger and we were talking about they wanted to do a quiz and um, they're like, but we just want to do it for fun. We don't want to like spend any money. And but they wanted to capture email addresses from the Facebook group. And I was like, okay, so there's clearly some messaging that needs to happen here because I mean, I think quizzes can like it's not an either or. It's it can be fun and for business and a great business builder. So I think that's still something that I occasionally will get. But I think one of the biggest challenges for me actually was pricing my service. That was the
Mm.
scariest part because I I was just like, I don't know what to price this at. And even after working with a business coach, and I wanted to increase my price, and she was like, "But have you sold any at that price?" And I'm like, "I think I'll show up bigger. I think I'll show
Mhm.
up for this price more." And sure enough, I have, and I'm now triple what I was at before.
Yeah. Nice. That's actually really interesting because I think a lot of I feel like every time I talk to people and especially if they're new in figuring out different types of services, they always do wonder like what do I price this at? What is this worth? So what how did you figure that out?
So partially, I took a look at what people were pricing out there, and so what is the market bearing? And I also, I knew that I wasn't, especially first starting out. So like, first of all, when I first started with quizzes, I actually did trades. Like, I will do a quiz for you. You need to give me a testimonial, or you need to help me
Oh,
spread the word. So
yeah.
that's actually how I first started. And I did a quiz for somebody who ended up not using the quiz. Actually, I've had that happen twice,
Mhm.
but they referred other people to me because they liked my work. They like it was a good experience for them. So like, yeah, that doesn't help my numbers, but it gave me additional business. And now I have relationships that have grown from there. So that's actually how I first started. And then I looked at what is the market bearing? And I looked at what the certified consultants were charging and really used that as the basis because I didn't have anything else. And I knew I wasn't going to be top of market. And I still don't want to be top of market because I want to work with scaling entrepreneurs
Mhm.
who are scaling to like the low six figures. So, you know, that's not a 8,000, 9,000, $10,000 service for me. And I feel good with where I'm at right now. So part of that now is strategic, but I think the biggest thing was that I tried it on for size. So I would say, like to my friends, or I would say to myself, like I'd role play, how much is this quiz service? $7.97. Or I tried like $9.97 at first, and that felt too big. And then I think I landed at $7.97, and that felt right. And then I always like for everything I do, I think about, will the market bear it? How does it feel? And can I cover expenses from it?
Mhm.
So that's how I price now.
Wow,
And
I
even
like that.
back then.
How do you so earlier you had mentioned, kind of what got you into thinking of starting your own business was you didn't have, free time in order to spend family time, right? Which I think is a big deal for a lot of people who do want to start their own online business. That's a big reason. They want to have more freedom and more free time to actually do the things they want to do. So, my first question from this is, do you feel like you now have that? And also, I guess, what steps did you have to take in order to get your business up and running to a place where you can go do that?
Yeah. Right now, I'm in a very busy season of trying to onboard, but I know that this is short lived. And the reason why I'm doing all of this, I can see that there's a finite point, which will allow me to have more of that freedom that I want. I think one of the biggest things was systems. Like, I didn't have my systems were kind of loose when I first started because I was still trying to figure it out. And then I really started, I use a CRM, a client relationship management software, and started to put together like draft email templates and workflows. I think that helped. Um, systems helped. That was number one. And then the second thing that I think was probably the best thing I could have done, also the scariest, was that I hired a virtual assistant. And because what I found is that there was a period of time where I wasn't showing up as my highest and best self in service to my clients. And that's not something that I'm like particularly like, it's not like I shout that from the rooftops and go, oh my God, that was the best day of my life. No, it was like some of the worst times because I know my quality and how I want to show up in this world. And what I was doing by trying to do everything wasn't it. So I hired somebody to help me. And I looked at those areas that I don't enjoy. Like, I love doing a quiz, or I love figuring it out. Like, okay, like providing that challenge of, but is your ideal client actually thinking about this? Like, I love that strategy. So some of the like the logistics and the admin task, no, thank you. So I hire somebody to help me do as much of that as possible. And right now, what we're in the process of doing is standard operating procedures. So in case somebody leaves, we can pick it right back up.
Mhm.
So that's what's eventually going to allow me to have more of that freedom and not to worry, well, did that person do this? Like, where, so that's really, I think, what'll help.
Yeah, I love that a lot because I was actually talking to somebody last week, I think it was, and she was saying something similar about being worried about hiring somebody to take other things on. And I do get it because you're like, this is, mine. It's everything that I came up with, and this is kind of like my baby. And it's hard to trust someone in order to take some of that on. And it's not something that I thought about before. I never thought of hiring other people as something being scary or, nerve-wracking, I guess.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of my business has come from referrals. So if there aren't referrals, there's no money to pay the person.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I had a health issue towards the end of last year. So I kind of had to put my business on pause, essentially. So that was really tough. Um, so having people who can, I mean, that is probably one of the biggest and best reasons is that when you take yourself out of all of the doing, then it doesn't matter if you get sick. Because if I had had a quiz specialist onboarded last year, I could have kept going.
Yeah.
Like I haven't enough Instagram content that anybody could take a look at and go, that's amazing. I want to hire her. Um, but if I had that support already in place, I wouldn't have had to put my business on pause. So now what I have is I have somebody who's on place and then in place, and then I don't have to worry about doing that or like if I'm not feeling well or if my kids need me, right? Like that gets to be that time freedom.
Was that something that you figured out in that time that you were sick, that you were like, "Okay, actually, if I when I get back into this, I need to get this set up in order for this to keep going if something happens again?" Or did you try to jump back in and then realize, "Oh, shoot, like, I don't like doing this part?"
Right. Yeah, it was the latter. So um I started doing it again and I was just like, I actually I had this realization. I'm not going to grow to the extent that I want to and impact as many women as I want to if it's just Emily Kuhn
Mhm.
doing all of the work, right? Because that's still, in essence, it's still kind of time for money. There's only so much time in the day.
Yes.
And I think the one of the big triggers for me because in let's see, I guess it was in early 2020, um, I did not have good boundaries in place. So when a client said, I need this ASAP, well, then I did it ASAP because I wanted to deliver and, all of that good stuff. Except I found myself being resentful because I was working on Mother's Day. So
Mm,
that for me, it was like, that was the first step of like, okay, you need to get boundaries in place. So that way work feels good.
yeah.
And then once I got sick and started getting back into it, it was just like, I can't really scale if it's just me doing the work all the time.
Mhm.
Even if I have an assistant who's helping me with client communications, it's still like I still need help to get to where I really want to go. And so that's where I decided to actually take steps to make it happen.
Yeah, I giggled because I'm the same exact way. When I get an email, I had to this year I had to really learn like, okay, if you're in the middle of doing something and you get an email of someone asking you to do something totally different, you need to, either A, let them know, "Hey, I can get to this at X time," or B, like, don't look at it yet. And then when you do have time, then look at it and go do that thing that they needed you to do.
Yeah, I am not the best at that. I will admit. That's an area for opportunity. That's an opportunity for improvement there.
I know, that's something that I've been working on for, like, oh, I don't know, like, the past 5 months already. Do you still feel like that's something that you are still actively working on, or were you able to actually get a good rhythm in place to where now you have that down?
So for boundaries, I am really good with it.
Mhm.
I use Calendly, well, I use scheduling link for all of my call times or market research or anything like that. And I just manage my schedule that way. So I have boundaries on my time for sure.
Mhm.
I would say one of the challenges right now, and this is just part of this, like some of the growing pains,
Yeah.
is that I have a part time office business manager who's now helping me because what I also realized was there are a lot of people I have to touch base with. I have somebody who's helping me with my social media engagement, and I have sales specialists, and I have a quiz specialist, and I have a VA. And like, I don't have time to talk to like five people at differing parts of the day. So I really needed to streamline that because what I didn't want to have happen was for me to be the bottleneck in my business. So
Yes.
now I can communicate with one person, and that's going to be helping because then everybody knows to flow communication up, and then we're getting more formalized in our processes. So that way, it's really clear as to who reports to who and when I actually am needed. So that's going to be helpful.
I love that because I think this is it is a huge challenge, right? To figure out like, okay, I have, say 8 hours in a day. And the reason why I started this was to be able to have more free time to do things that I want to do. What's the point if I still have to talk to people all day and still do
Yeah.
other parts of the job that I'm supposed to be doing?
Yeah. I mean, working on quizzes at 9 and 10 p.m. at night was not really ideal for me. So um, I think it was those signs that, they keep showing up, and it's like, hey, you either pay attention to me or I'm going to really make myself known. And having learned lessons on boundaries, now I'm like, okay, what can we do now? Even little things, I'm always thinking about how can we make this process smoother? How
Yeah.
can we make the client experience better? What can we, like, I'm always thinking about that. And through that, I think making a client experience better, having good processes in place, I think that really helps a business run. And like the other, like the mindset thing though, was I really felt like I stepped into my leadership. Like I really became a CEO. And it wasn't just like, okay, I founded a quiz company and it was just me or me and a VA. It's like, all right, I actually am paying, I mean, still through contract work, but I have people who are reporting to me and who are looking for me for answers and guidance. And I need to step into that role of CEO, and I can't just like, I don't feel right anyway, just like messy actioning it
Yeah.
when it comes to leadership. So that was, I think, um, a really beautiful observation that I had because that was like, okay, I'm growing as an
Mhm.
entrepreneur, and that's great.
Yeah, because something that I noticed in my time working with, online coaches and consultants and everyone in that kind of industry is that, you do own an agency, but I never realized how most of them are just that one person and they are doing a lot of the work. So what is it like? I guess how can you fully trust other people to take ownership or be responsible for different parts of your business?
So for me, it's about communication and expectations. So, like for the sales specialists I just onboarded, I wrote out an entire sales framework of here's how I want the sales calls to
Mhm.
go. And I even shifted, and like when I talk about stepping into my leadership, this is a really great example of this because I would get on sales calls and or discovery calls, whatever you want to call them. And for me, they were about one and the same.
Yeah.
And I would just talk to the person, what are your goals? And it was like I didn't have anything written, it was just me, I knew what I was going to say. And I went through a sales call experience that I thought, that is awesome. I want to do something like that. And so when I wrote out my sales framework for my sales specialist, I said, here's how I want this call to go.
Mhm.
I mean, yes, I'd love for people to work with us, but I know that they will get massive value out of this call regardless. Whether they opt, whether they opt to work with us at our lowest price point or our highest price point. And they're going to get some artifacts that are really going to help them. And we touch on different aspects. I talk about like I try to give them as much information as possible so they feel informed. And I think that was something that that helps create that trust because
Yeah.
I'm writing it out. I'm like, this is the expectation. And you also need to email them within 24 hours with the post sales call. And you need to input this on the log so that way we can make sure you get paid.
Mhm.
And so it's communicating out those expectations. Um, and then also making sure people know that they can come to me or my OBM,
Mhm.
right? So, like one person said, I don't really feel like I have a good handle on this piece. Can you
Yeah.
explain it to me? So, I mean, I could say, like, look, here's the framework. It has everything you need. Go forth. That's
Yeah.
that didn't. For her, something wasn't clear. So I'm glad that she asked, right? Because
Right.
then that sales call is not going to go well, or it may not. There may have issues. So I think that's part of it. And then that communication up. So just checking in, making sure, like, here are the things that are my priorities. And I have my OBM being able to track how we're completing those. And so, and then using Voxer or other things to
Mhm.
help us stay in communication so that we know things are progressing. I think that's it. I mean, communication and expectations are like, you can't go wrong with those.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it does it feel or well, I'm trying to think of the right way to say it. Did it feel hard to actually pass some of this stuff on to other people?
Um, no, actually, it actually didn't because I was so like I needed to. I wasn't showing up as my best self. And I wasn't like really like I was resenting work a little bit because I was doing so much of it. And if I had left my job, which had like amazing salary and benefits, and
Mhm.
I'm going to be working for myself, like, but the main reason why I left was to be present with the kids. Like, I got to be present with the kids. And so
Mhm.
for me, it was very liberating. And again, I had constant communication with my VA. She was the first person that I outsourced work to. We'd have constant communication and until we got in like a rhythm with each other. And then it's like, okay, she can send that out. Or if she sent something out that didn't quite, hit the mark in terms of what I was expecting, then we had a conversation about, hey, well, then next time let's do this.
Yes.
So I think now for me, it was like a welcome, it was a welcome change.
Was there a um was there like a period of time where you felt like you needed to fall back in love with your business and what you were doing after you decided, okay, I'm going to hire somebody because I'm not loving this like I used to? And then you hired someone, then what happened from there?
For me, I could really see the potential
Mhm.
because when you're in it and you're just like slogging through it and trying to be your PR and your marketing and all the things, um, it's like you can't step back and breathe and see what's going on. And so I think that was that's where I started to like it more. I mean, I've always loved it, but
Mhm.
I started to like it more or
Yes,
like it
fun
again.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I think it's I don't know, it's just like this is kind of part of the reason we want to do a podcast like this, right? Is to kind of show people like, hey, you can make small changes or even big changes, I guess you could say, and still be where you want to be, go where you want to go, if this is something that you really, really, really want.
Yeah. And I mean, I think with entrepreneurship, I mean, even with my own business, like I love teaching. That is something that is in my zone of genius. Like I absolutely love it. Um, I I did a lot of training last year in another business and in another one of my businesses. And so I try to implement that. And I will actually come out with a course here soon. Um, but I think we can try things and that's okay. So when I was thinking about it, because when I was thinking about I can't scale the way I want if it's just me doing these quizzes, and I didn't even think about, well, Emily, hire out, like hire out the parts. Like I kind of had thought about that. That was a strategic vision that was in my mind so far down in the future that I hadn't really gotten to like a place where I had made it and now I can convert this to an agency.
Yeah.
And then I was like, there's nothing stopping me from creating the agency now.
Hmm.
So I can actually help impact people now. I can create the course because what I found was that I really love, like I mentioned earlier, like I truly believe quizzes are a great tool for every entrepreneur. So I try to make it accessible to entrepreneurs at every level, whether you're making, you know, 15,000 or 150,000. And as part of that, I did group coaching for quiz creation. And I found I actually don't love being a coach. I
Mm,
love teaching.
yeah.
So that was something that I tried. It's great quality work that we put into it. I loved the students that went through my program or the participants that went through the program. But I had that realization like, oh, that's interesting. I'm not a big fan of coaching. That
Hmm.
was taking a lot of energy that I didn't have for health reasons. And so then it was, okay, how do I make this change? And I think, um, trying those different things is just all part of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Um, so,
Yeah, it kind of sounds like, you really have to dig deep and I guess self-reflect quite often to figure out like, what parts I love, what parts I think I can pass off to someone else, and then how do I also make this into something that I'm proud of at the same time.
yeah. Well, and for somebody like me who's very analytical,
Mhm.
that's easy to do. Like I'm thinking all the time. So yeah, for me, I always think about, and somebody gave me some advice, like what are the things you should hire out? The things that don't bring you joy,
Mhm.
or the things that um, are below your hourly rate or hourly worth. And
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, because then it's really kind of, at least on paper, it's costing you money
Mhm.
where you could be doing income producing activities or doing something else that is on par with what you're worth or what your rate is. So,
Oh,
you know,
sorry, 1 second. I'm just gonna pause this real quick. Okay, and we're back. Go ahead.
yeah. So, I mean, if you think about if your hourly rate is $100, but to enter data or enter some information into a spreadsheet, that's really not $100 task. So if you outsource that to a neighbor kid, a son, or a VA, that's like a $15 to $25 task.
Mhm.
Then you can spend your time doing the things that you love to do or being on the calls or connecting with clients, whatever it is. And um, so that's kind of part of the logic of what to hire out. And I loosely follow that.
What do you mean by loosely?
Oh, um, well, for me, because I also have a technical, like I'm relatively good in tech.
Mhm.
Um, I can take an idea and go to like execution in one weekend. And
Wow.
I have to remember, just because I like doing something doesn't mean I should always do something,
Oh.
because I should delegate this out so
Mhm.
that way I can spend time with family, or I can be more strategic, or do something that's really like, I can empower my VA to
Mhm.
do the tasks that are appropriate for her. So that's what I mean by loosely, because sometimes I can't help myself and I'm like tinkering in the website to try to build a new page. And she
That's a
just,
really big realization though. If I mean, I guess like yeah, if you have the time to put it in and you like doing it, makes sense, but I think that's a pretty big part of what you should, delegate out is, how can I make sure that I'm making good use of my time?
yeah. Yeah, because there's always something that we can do, whether it's self development or professional development, or just like chill out. um, and then save those tasks for the people who should be doing them.
Mhm. Mhm. So, would you say before you were able to hire people to take some of these other tasks on, were you working crazy hours?
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting because even though I had time flexibility, which was great,
Mhm.
I was working pretty much every day. And that was not great. um, and then so it started with that of working every day. I think my husband once said, like, oh, it's like every day is a weekend for you. And I was like, no, every day is a work day for me. And
Mm.
that's what it was like. And then I started to implement in my business systems and self care day. So every Friday,
Oh.
I would do like, I'd work on my systems. I would do like, I wouldn't book any calls on Friday. It was just purely to work on me and work on things that I needed to for my business. And that felt so good. That really shifted things too, because then I could think about, like, just again, stepping into that leadership.
Mm.
Um, and so that was, I think, really, that was a huge move for me.
Yeah, I like that a lot as a kind of strategy, right? Because you have to stop and take care of yourself in order to keep going and then in
Yeah.
order to grow from there. How did you come across, I guess, deciding to do that?
Um, hmm. I think I was just tired of working every day, to be honest.
Yeah.
And um, the other thing too, so I have two kids, and that was the other part that I think has been really challenging, is because when your family works or goes to school Monday through Friday, and then they're off on the weekends, and they're like, "Hey, we're off, like
Mhm.
hang out." I'm like, "But I have work to do."
Yeah.
So that was kind of tough. And I knew that I wanted to get to that point where I wasn't always working, like that if I did some work, it was just like a little bit on a Saturday or something before they really woke up.
Yeah.
And um, but I knew that with them being in school, I could take Fridays where I don't have to like really like be mom because they're in school. I could take Fridays and do some of that stuff where I could take care of myself and take care of my business. And so that's how self-care and systems and self-care Friday was born.
Wow, it's funny because I know I asked it making it sound like, oh, there was some very strategic planning going there.
No, it's purely like mom life entered into the
Yeah.
picture and I just needed to not be mom.
Sometimes though, I think that's the best way to figure out what's best for you is to just kind of
Yeah.
see, okay, what is really bugging me right now? And let's just try something out to see if that'll work. So how is the self-care Fridays going?
Okay, so not so great right now. Although every other Friday I get a massage, that's part of my self-care. Um, but I do have self-care on the weekends. So I've transitioned it more. So I work during the week and then I take weekends off. And then I am with family.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of bubble baths.
Oh, I
And
love that. I
yeah.
love that.
And my kids will say, are you okay? You sometimes you've been in there for like 2 hours, and I'm like, I know. It's amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome slash hilarious that they're like, what's is she okay?"
I know. I know.
Come out.
Well, it's like a whole thing. I have like music on, I'm reading, I have coffee, I have LED lights. Like I make it a production.
Yeah.
'Cause that's what makes me feel good. And and just like in the moment instead of like being in mom mode. Like,
Mhm.
so that's my time.
Yeah, I mean, we've been remote for oh man, it's been over 2 years already. It was like March of 2019 we went fully remote, and, I had just such a hard time with the flexibility of working whenever as long as your work gets done, and
Yeah.
at first I thought that meant, "Okay, like, now I don't have to commute, so I should be working more." I should be working a little bit longer, and then I hit a point where I was like, "Ah, I actually don't like this very much. I have no time to actually cook anything. I can't, relax on the couch because I still have to exercise at some point in the day. And before you know it, I need to go to bed." And so that was pretty crazy for me. And I'm sure a lot of people, starting their own businesses, especially if it's your own business, right? You get to kind of pick and choose, what do I want to get done? And it's just kind of up to me. So, how did you figure out what that looked like? And I know you mentioned the SelfCare Fridays, but how did you structure that in a way that was like, okay, these are the hours that I'm going to work, and then, I'm going to make sure that on weekends I'm also free in order to do what I want.
Yeah, so for me, I really struggled with all of that flexibility and I needed structure.
Yeah, I'm the
So
same way.
I decided so I think I really had to come to this, and yeah, I think y'all can tell like I really think about a lot of things
Yeah.
because I was like, you know what? We talk about like time flexibility so much, and that, we don't have certain hours to work, and isn't that freeing? That can be very freeing for some people,
Mhm.
but for others, it creates this like chaos of like, oh, I can do work whenever. So I'll do that later. And
Yeah.
then maybe it gets done, maybe it doesn't. So I actually put myself on work hours. I'm like, okay, I'm working from 9:30 to 5:30.
Mhm.
And I stuck to that. Or I think I worked 10 to 6. Um, and so I would stick to that. And at 6 p.m., computer was off and I was upstairs having dinner with the family, doing karate and doing all the things.
I love that. I think that's such an important part. I actually had that realization recently where, you have to have that separation of work and home if you're at home for both,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
it is a crazy kind of process, I guess, because you have I don't know, it's hard time I have a hard time separating the 2, and especially with the pandemic and everyone forced at home, I had to move my whole desk into the bedroom, as everyone can see now, if you're watching the video version of this, but, I had to move my whole desk into the bedroom so my fiancé could be outside in the living room where he's on calls all day and I couldn't concentrate, and so then after that, I was like, "Okay, I'm literally sleeping and working in the same place." And now I have to also kinda go through that process and figure out how to separate those 2. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That is tough. I am fortunate that I have my office downstairs in the basement with my salty blue wall behind me.
Yeah.
Uh, it's great. Like it is my place where I can
Mhm.
step away from it. So I am fortunate in that regard.
Yeah, so it's kind of like you are physically leaving the office, so you're
Yeah.
physically leaving work. Oh, I love that. I wish I had
Yeah.
that. One day. One well, I think that's all I had.
Awesome. Well, I have really enjoyed our chat.
Yeah, me too.
I Yeah, I love what quizzes can do for people, and I love being a part of that.
Oh,
And I love being able to empower. people with that. And I'm such a nerd because I think about the psychological aspects of quizzes and how they can help us create community. And all of that stuff is so fascinating to me that I am like really pumped anytime I get to talk about quizzes. And like, so for me, this was like super fun because I'm like, yeah, let's jam out.
Yeah. Love that. I love that. I do have 2 last minute questions that I always like to close out every episode with if you're up
Sure.
for it.
Yeah.
So, what are 3 things most people don't know about you?
Ooh. Um, let's see. The first thing is that I won a an Indian leg wrestling competition.
Whoa, what is that?
It's where it's where you like lay on the ground
Uh-huh.
and you like swing your leg, like I'm not really describing it very well,
Yeah.
but you like swing your legs and then 1, 2, 3, and then you hook the leg, and then if you flip the person, you win.
Wow, I've never heard of that.
Yeah. It's like a game from, I think it was like when I was growing up. But
Mm.
yeah, it was, I actually won this as an adult at a fitness camp
That's
where
awesome.
we had games, like we had field day, and that was one of the games. So that's one thing. Second thing was that, or is that um, I was a fitness competitor for a couple of years. Yeah, I loved it. It was so much fun. And then the third thing, I mean, I kind of already alluded to it, but I do karate. So, like,
Okay, yeah, you did allude to it, but I thought of it in, like, just kind of the context of, being around, but not actually doing
you know,
it.
I actually do it. I'm
That's
going for my
awesome.
green belt either this month or
Whoa,
next. Yeah.
that's
And
awesome.
my son is a black belt.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, so those are three things that people may not know about me.
Oh, I love that. So, my last question is, what is a single piece of advice you would give yourself at the start of it all?
Ooh, don't stray from who you are.
I love that.
Yeah, I think what I found myself doing is getting caught up in this echo chamber of entrepreneurship and listening to so many people. And some of it was great,
Mhm.
but I really found myself being lost and losing a little bit about who I am, thinking I had to be a group, I had to do group coaching if I didn't want to do service all the time.
Mhm.
Um, and I think just staying true to who you are, and like there's no rule. That's the thing. There is no rule in entrepreneurship, right? Like we can make our own rules.
Yeah.
So make your own rule for your business.
Oh, that's awesome. I think that's one of the best ones I've ever had on here.
Nice.
Woo! No, that
Yeah.
was so good. All right, Emily. Well, thank you so much for being on Creator Stories with us. We enjoyed having you so much.
Oh my gosh, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Of course. All right, guys. Oh, and lastly, where can people find you online?
Yeah. So you can find me at Emily Kund on Instagram, and you can find me on my website, www.emilykund.com.
And that is KUND.
Oh, yeah, it's Kund.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
If they watch the video, they'll see it or read the transcript, but just in case you're listening, that's how you spell it. Um,
Yes.
all right. Well, thanks, guys, and we will see you next time. Bye.
All right. Great.